So she's
I mean,
a
they
serial
sound reasonable.
fraudster. That's called fraud. She's a Me Too victim there. That's absurd.
Blake Lively is having a full-scale meltdown after Megyn Kelly ripped apart her perfect image and exposed her messy past in the most brutal way possible.
And her husband are bullies.
For years, Blake has strutted through Hollywood like she owns the place, charming the cameras, smiling for the press, and acting like she's the industry's golden girl. But behind the scenes, it's a whole different story. She's bulldozed careers, humiliated people on live TV, and ruled over sets like a queen who couldn't be questioned. Now, thanks to Megyn Kelly, all that power is slipping right through her fingers.
She seems like kind of a jerk. Wow, she's like kind of a bully. She's rather mean.
Blake Lively has spent years convincing the world she's the epitome of grace, beauty, and effortless likability. Every red carpet moment, every flawless interview, it was all part of a carefully constructed performance. But Megyn just smashed the illusion to pieces. Because before Blake was busy hijacking It Ends With Us and going full-on dictator mode on Justin Baldoni, she was already setting the stage for her own personal power trip. This isn't just a one-time scandal. This is a pattern. And now that Megyn has dragged it all into the spotlight, there's no more hiding. Blake's empire of control is finally crumbling.
Claims he sexual harassed her, and then by the time they premiered the movie, they weren't even speaking to each other. She made him stay in the basement, and Ryan Reynolds turned on him too. And then she claimed that he unleashed a bad PR campaign against her.
Back in her Gossip Girl days, Blake wasn't just playing a role, she was working the Hollywood game like a seasoned strategist, weaving her way into the right circles with the precision of a chess grandmaster.
Wrested his movie away from him and decided to try to hurt him with petty, made-up, out-of-context complaints when he pushed back even in the mildest way.
In a 2009 interview, she straight up admitted to turning the Gossip Girl cast against Penn Badgley simply because she didn't like him at first. Not just keeping her distance, not just ignoring him. She actively made sure the entire cast iced him out, treating him like an outsider while she basked in the spotlight. High school mean girl behavior, but on a Hollywood scale with a budget to back it. And the most twisted part?
2009 Glamour UK interview by Blake Lively. She was on the cover at the time, and in her interview, she admitted to trying to poison the cast of Gossip Girl, which is where she made her name.
She later admitted that Penn was actually a nice guy. So, all that backstabbing, all that manipulation, it wasn't about survival, it was about Blake flexing her power just because she could.
Against her co-star, Penn Badgley, who played her love interest, Dan Humphrey, on the show. She said, "At first I was so upset that they had hired him, I actually poisoned the whole cast against him."
And that wasn't some one-time stunt. Blake perfected the art of keeping her hands clean while making sure others got pushed out. She played the media like a pro, maintained her squeaky clean image, and made sure no one ever noticed the strings she was pulling behind the scenes. But now, with her reputation unraveling in a full-blown Hollywood courtroom circus, there's one thing she didn't see coming. Nobody's stepping in to save her. Not a single Gossip Girl co-star has come to her defense.
And she goes on to say, but then they noticed that he wasn't a jerk and was actually a nice, charming person, and almost immediately I realized it too. But it took me about a week to admit it.
Leighton Meester? Silent? Penn Badgley? Radio silence? The rest of the cast? Acting like she never even existed. These are people who worked with her for 6 years. If there was ever a time to vouch for her character, this would be it. But guess what? The silence is deafening. But the silence isn't just awkward. It's loud. And it speaks volumes, revealing more than any headline ever could. Blake's fallout with Leighton Meester? Just another piece of this messy puzzle.
Reports were that Blake Lively and Leighton Meester, who played best friends on that show, were not friends during the 6-season run of the show. Leighton Meester and Penn Badgley and other Gossip Girl co-stars have remained silent in the wake of the Baldoni legal drama.
On screen, Serena and Blair were the ultimate best friend duo. Inseparable, glamorous, and full of drama. But behind the cameras, it was a complete disaster. Blake, always obsessed with keeping the spotlight on herself, reportedly couldn't stand that Leighton was actually focused on acting instead of chasing Hollywood clout. While Blake was busy crafting her celebrity status, Leighton cared more about delivering solid performances. And the tension? It got so bad that by the time Gossip Girl wrapped, they weren't even speaking. Now, with Blake's legal drama plastered all over the news, Leighton isn't saying a word in her defense. Almost like karma's finally knocking at Blake's door, and this time, there's no escape. And this is exactly what Megyn Kelly put on blast. Blake's entire career, it's been a never-ending cycle of manipulation, forming alliances, and flipping the script the moment things don't go her way. First, it was Penn Badgley, then Leighton Meester, now Justin Baldoni. The pattern never changes. Blake seizes control, rewrites the narrative in her favor, and when it starts slipping through her fingers, she suddenly plays the victim.
All I do is buy soccer teams that win, sell tequila that people like, or vodka, or whatever it is, and he's like generally stayed above, and then all of a sudden he is in the dirt with it.
Back in 2022, Blake Lively stood on stage at the Forbes Power Women's Summit, dazzling the audience with her signature charm, delivering what was supposed to be an inspiring speech about success and ambition. But instead, she ended up exposing her own playbook for industry manipulation. What was meant to be a motivational moment turned into a full-blown confession, laying out step by step exactly what Justin Baldoni is dragging her to court over today. At the time, nobody thought much of it. Just another Hollywood star delivering a polished speech. But now, with Blake's entire career under a magnifying glass, that resurfaced clip is blowing up. And it's coming back to haunt her in the most spectacular way possible.
Blake Lively is caught in old footage, revealing that yes, her secret plan is to always take control of the movies and lie to the director.
Standing before an audience that hung on to her every word, Blake casually admitted to finessing her way into roles by pretending to be the perfect fit for whatever directors wanted. Playing the eager, humble actress who was just thrilled to be part of the project. But once she locked in the role, that's when the real takeover began.
Forbes Power Women, and she's so confident. Exactly, I think it's so telling how confident she is to just say, I have no qualms lying to the director, taking control of their movie, pulling the rug from them, like, oh my God.
She started injecting her own ideas, rewriting scripts, and making executive decisions that were never hers to make. Slowly but surely, she edged out the actual creatives, pushing them aside like she was running the show. And the worst part? She laughed about it. Blake openly joked about how some directors felt betrayed when they realized what she was doing, as if hijacking projects was some kind of genius power move instead of straight-up manipulation. This wasn't some slip of the tongue. This wasn't an exaggeration. This was Blake Lively on record, laying out her entire blueprint for career domination, step by step. And now, just 2 years later, Justin Baldoni is dragging her to court for doing exactly what she bragged about on that stage. Because his lawsuit? It directly accuses Blake of pretending to be just an actress in It Ends With Us, only to swoop in, override his creative vision, and push him out of his own movie. And here's the real kicker. Justin Baldoni's production company funded the film, secured the rights from Colleen Hoover, and spent years carefully developing it. But the moment Blake stepped in, she did exactly what she admitted to doing back in 2022. She hijacked the entire project, flipping the script to make herself the one in charge. And let's be clear, this wasn't a one-time thing. This is a pattern. Blake has mastered the art of the slow burn takeover. It always starts the same way. Just a few innocent creative suggestions, just a little input. But before anyone realizes what's happening, she's running the show. Directors who push back? They were either ignored, outmaneuvered, or quietly pushed out of the picture altogether. She knew exactly how to work the system, get cast, gain trust, make herself indispensable, and then take full control. It was a foolproof strategy. And for years, it worked flawlessly. Until Justin Baldoni. See, unlike the Hollywood heavyweights she's manipulated in the past, Justin wasn't an A-list director with the power of a major studio behind him. He wasn't a Christopher Nolan or a Denis Villeneuve. He was an independent filmmaker, someone still carving out his own space in the industry. And that's exactly why Blake thought she could run him over. At first, she played nice, acting like she was just another team player, happy to collaborate. But before long, she was rewriting scripts, making executive decisions, and treating the entire production like her personal project. And slowly, but surely, Baldoni was pushed to the sidelines until he wasn't just losing control of his own movie. He was becoming an afterthought. By the time It Ends With Us premiered, Blake had done the unthinkable. She had completely erased Justin Baldoni from the picture. The very man who fought to bring this film to life. The one who secured the rights, developed the story, and poured his heart into the project, wasn't even allowed to attend his own premiere. Meanwhile, Blake? She basked in the spotlight, soaking up the attention, posing for cameras, acting like the sole creative force behind the film. And Baldoni? He was literally forced to stay in the basement. A brutal final power move. A clear, undeniable message about who really ran the show. But here's where Blake messed up. She got cocky. Those smug words she proudly flaunted back in 2022, they're now being used against her as evidence. What she once bragged about as proof of her Hollywood influence has completely backfired, exposing her entire career playbook for what it really is: manipulation on an industry-wide scale. And as more people start connecting the dots, one thing is becoming painfully obvious. Blake Lively didn't just hijack It Ends With Us. She's been running this con for years. It all started back in 2019 when Justin Baldoni first secured the film rights to Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel. This wasn't just another Hollywood adaptation for him. This was a deeply personal project, something he had been passionate about for years. His production company, Wayfarer Studios, optioned the rights, and by early 2022, development was in full swing. As both producer and director, Baldoni had a clear vision: a film that would capture the novel's raw emotional depth and bring powerful conversations about domestic violence to the screen. But what started as his dream project quickly spiraled into something completely unrecognizable. In April 2023, Blake Lively was officially announced as the lead, set to portray Lily Bloom. On the surface, it seemed like a massive win. An A-list actress headlining a highly anticipated adaptation of a beloved book with a die-hard fan base. But behind the scenes, Blake wasn't just stepping into a role, she was laying the groundwork for a hostile takeover. According to production sources, the moment she was cast, Blake started demanding changes to the script. And we're not talking minor tweaks or a few suggestions. These were full-scale rewrites, gutting key elements of the original screenplay. Rewrites that weren't approved by Baldoni or the actual creative team. Allegedly, she insisted that certain scenes needed to be adjusted to fit her interpretation of Lily. But as time passed, it became crystal clear. This wasn't about collaboration. This was about control. By mid-2023, Blake's grip on the project had spread far beyond the script. Insiders revealed that she started overriding directorial decisions, leaving Baldoni completely blindsided. He had signed on to work with her as an actress, but suddenly he found himself sidelined from his own vision. And Blake's power play didn't stop there. She allegedly leveraged her Hollywood connections to reshape the entire production team, bringing in her own editors and producers, people who aligned with her version of the film. Baldoni? He was being pushed out further and further, his influence shrinking by the day. But the boldest move? By late 2023, Blake was reportedly demanding final cut approval, a privilege that traditionally only belongs to the director or the studio. Let's not forget, Baldoni was the one who optioned the rights, financed the project, and built the entire film from the ground up. Yet somehow, Blake had maneuvered her way into controlling every major decision. Even the studio executives were caught off guard by just how much influence she had managed to seize behind the scenes. By the time filming wrapped in early 2024, It Ends With Us was no longer Justin Baldoni's film. Blake Lively had completely taken over, reshaping the entire project into her vision. And according to insiders, Baldoni's original version tested better with audiences. But Blake refused to back down. She insisted that her version was the one that had to be released, making it crystal clear. This wasn't about collaboration. This was about erasing Baldoni's vision entirely. And then came the ultimate humiliation. In May 2024, the highly anticipated New York City premiere of It Ends With Us took place, a night that was supposed to be a celebration of the film's release. But when Justin Baldoni arrived, he wasn't even allowed on the main floor. The very man who secured the rights, developed the film for 5 years, and directed it was reduced to a footnote in his own project. Multiple reports confirmed that Baldoni was forced to stay in the basement, a move so petty and calculated, it left Hollywood insiders stunned. And Blake? She didn't acknowledge him at all. According to sources at the event, she made sure the entire night was about her film, her moment to shine. Witnesses claim Baldoni looked visibly uncomfortable, knowing full well that the man who should have been front and center had been deliberately pushed out of sight. But this wasn't just about the premiere itself. Blake's PR machine went into overdrive. Her team ensured that every press headline, every photo, every single piece of media coverage centered on her. Baldoni? It was as if he never existed. By the next morning, entertainment news was flooded with glowing headlines like Blake Lively stuns at It Ends With Us premiere. Photos of her on the red carpet, flashing that signature Hollywood smile, were everywhere. And Baldoni? Barely a mention. Interviews were carefully edited, scrubbing out any reference to his actual role in bringing the film to life. The entire narrative had been reframed, as if Baldoni had no real involvement in the project at all. But the final blow? It wasn't just professional, it was personal. Within hours of the premiere, Ryan Reynolds, Blake's husband, and one of Hollywood's most influential actors, unfollowed Justin Baldoni on Instagram. And in an industry where social media moves speak volumes, this was huge. No press statement, no explanation, just a clear, cold message. Blake had made her choice, and Baldoni was officially cut off. At this point, it was bigger than a film dispute. This was a full-blown severance, both professionally and personally. And for Hollywood insiders, this was the moment Blake's carefully curated image started to crack. What happened to Baldoni wasn't some innocent oversight. It wasn't a scheduling conflict or a misunderstanding. It was a calculated power move. And as more details start coming out, one thing is impossible to ignore. Blake Lively was willing to bulldoze anyone to make sure this film belonged only to her. Then came the Hollywood earthquake. Megyn Kelly has never been one to sugarcoat the truth, and when she obliterated Blake's squeaky clean reputation, it was brutal. In February 2025, during an explosive segment on The Megyn Kelly Show, she didn't just call out Blake's downfall, she made it crystal clear. This wasn't some media witch hunt. This was karma, cashing in, years overdue. For years, the 2016 press junket for Cafe Society was buried. No one brought it up. No one dared mention it. But in February 2025, the footage resurfaced, and within hours, it exploded across the internet, spreading like wildfire. It started off like any typical Hollywood interview. Kirsty, a Swedish journalist, was just doing her job, asking polite, standard questions, keeping it professional. She even congratulated Blake on her pregnancy, keeping the mood light and respectful. Nothing out of the ordinary, but Blake's reaction? Downright nasty. Instead of smiling and moving on like any reasonable person would, Blake looked Kirsty up and down and coldly remarked that she had a baby bump too. The problem? Kirsty wasn't pregnant. She could never be pregnant. And later, she revealed that Blake's words weren't some thoughtless mistake. They were a deliberate jab, a calculated attempt to humiliate her. And the footage? It didn't lie. Blake wasn't joking. She wasn't being playful. She was being mean. That smug expression, the dismissive tone, the refusal to make eye contact. It was all there, captured on camera for the world to see. And she wasn't alone. Her co-star, Parker Posey, sat right beside her, laughing along, feeding into the toxic high school bully energy. What should have been a harmless professional interview spiraled into a public takedown, with Kirsty on the receiving end of Blake's sharp-edged cruelty. And now that the footage is out, people are finally seeing the real Blake Lively, unedited, unfiltered, and completely exposed. For years, Kirsty kept that footage locked away, hidden from the public eye. She later admitted that she never spoke out earlier because she feared retaliation. And who could blame her? Blake Lively wasn't just another Hollywood actress. She was protected, powerful, and dangerously well-connected. Speaking out against her could have been a career-ending move, one that might have gotten Kirsty blacklisted from the industry overnight. But now, with Blake's entire career under intense scrutiny, her manipulative past exposed, her long history of mistreating people finally out in the open, Kirsty finally felt safe enough to share the truth. And the moment that footage hit the internet, it obliterated whatever was left of Blake Lively's America's Sweetheart image. The instant Blake's mean girl moment went viral, her PR team spiraled into full-blown panic mode. Hollywood Damage Control 101. When bad press starts spreading, shift the narrative fast. And within 48 hours, that's exactly what happened. Suddenly, TMZ and People magazine were running suspiciously timed stories about how Blake felt deeply uncomfortable filming with Justin Baldoni. The headlines? Perfectly crafted. The narrative? Baldoni had fat-shamed Blake during a critical on-set moment. The fat-shaming accusation? It came out of nowhere. Industry insiders were quick to call it out, pointing to the real story behind the claim. Baldoni had a documented back injury during filming. The only reason he ever asked about Blake's weight was to ensure proper stunt coordination, an industry standard for physically demanding scenes. This wasn't about body shaming. It was about safety. But Blake's team? They needed a distraction, and fast, because no amount of PR spin was going to erase the brutal reality. Blake Lively's mask had finally slipped. But now, that routine on-set conversation was being twisted, repackaged into a scandal, and weaponized as an insult. And that's where it all fell apart. Because if there was one person who couldn't play the body-shaming victim card, it was Blake Lively. The Kirsty interview scandal was still fresh in the public's mind. The same woman who now claimed to be deeply hurt by a simple weight-related safety check was the exact same woman who mocked a journalist's body on camera in front of an entire press room. If she was so traumatized by weight comments, then why had she been so comfortable publicly humiliating someone else over theirs? The hypocrisy wasn't just obvious, it was impossible to ignore. And suddenly, people weren't just questioning Blake's accusations against Baldoni anymore. They were questioning everything. Was this whole fat-shaming scandal nothing more than a distraction? A smokescreen to bury her own nasty behavior? And then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get messier, the leaked messages surfaced. And this time, it wasn't just about Blake. Private messages from inside Blake's inner circle revealed exactly how she operated behind closed doors. And this time, the scandal dragged Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift straight into the chaos. The messages exposed that Blake had referred to Ryan and Taylor as her dragons, her personal enforcers, the ones she could always count on to publicly back her up whenever she needed damage control. And Ryan? He played his part flawlessly because within hours of the scandal blowing up, he was already running interference, doing exactly what Blake had counted on him to do. Within days of the controversy exploding, Ryan Reynolds made his move. No public statements, no official stance, Just one swift, strategic action, he unfollowed Justin Baldoni on Instagram. And in Hollywood, that kind of silent power play speaks volumes. There was no need for a press release. Ryan's loyalty was crystal clear. Blake had officially severed ties with Baldoni, and Ryan was falling in line, backing his wife without question. And in an industry where optics are everything, his quiet allegiance sent a very loud message. But Taylor Swift? That was a different story. For years, Blake had paraded her friendship with Taylor like a VIP pass, attending exclusive events, posting carefully curated photos, using their connection to solidify her cool girl image. But now? As Blake's scandal spiraled out of control, Taylor started doing something no one expected. She pulled back. It wasn't just about Baldoni. Reports started circulating that Taylor felt used, realizing that Blake had dragged her into a personal war she had nothing to do with. And for Taylor, who was already dealing with her own year of intense media scrutiny, getting too close to Blake's self-inflicted disaster was a PR risk she wasn't willing to take. She didn't release a statement. She didn't call out Blake. She didn't defend Baldoni. She simply stayed silent. And in Hollywood, silence can be louder than words. While Blake scrambled behind the scenes, desperately trying to rewrite the media narrative, Justin Baldoni was preparing for something far bigger. Because while she was busy fighting for public approval, Baldoni was getting ready for the real battle, the courtroom showdown. In early 2025, Justin Baldoni's legal team, led by powerhouse defamation attorney Brian Friedman, dropped a bombshell. They officially filed a lawsuit against the New York Times. The accusation? Defamation. Baldoni's team alleged that the newspaper had recklessly published one-sided, unverified claims in support of Blake, printing false accusations with zero concrete evidence. But the real shocker? The hard proof Baldoni's team presented in court. Actual text messages that proved Blake's claims weren't just exaggerated. Some were completely fabricated. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't hearsay. These were receipts. The lawsuit rocked Hollywood, forcing the entire industry to ask the question that had been lurking beneath the surface. Had Blake weaponized the media to destroy Baldoni's career? Had she orchestrated an entire smear campaign, leveraging her deep industry ties to rewrite history in her favor? Or was this all just an elaborate scheme to protect her takeover of It Ends With Us, no matter the cost? But the real nail in the coffin? It wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't the leaked messages. It was the silent rebellion happening right under Blake's nose. At first, Colleen Hoover stood by Blake. When the drama first exploded, she publicly supported her. But then, something changed. By February 2025, fans started noticing a major shift. Hoover had erased every single mention of Blake from her social media. No posts, no interviews, no transcripts. It was like Blake had never been associated with her at all. The very woman whose book Blake fought so hard to control had silently scrubbed her from existence. And now, after everything, the evidence, the lawsuit, the exposed lies, one question remains. How is Blake Lively going to spin her way out of this one? Because at this point, it looks like there's no escape. If you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you on the next one.